Hi, I am Monique Burns coming to you today from Northern Michigan to talk to you today about doing background checks on tenants who have a Section 8 voucher. Do you even need to do a background check? I'm going to tell you right now, yes, you do. And what is different about doing a background check with somebody with Section 8 compared to doing it with somebody else? There are a few bonuses to running a background check on somebody that has Section 8, and then there's a few surprises, and I've got a big surprise there at the end that I'm excited to tell you about. So let's reel up the intro and let's get started. One of my favorite things about renting to somebody with Section 8 is the income part. So Section 8 requires a ton of paperwork that tenants have to bring before they even get a voucher. So I'm going to start listing that all right here, what they are required to turn in. And just as a landlord, sure, I could require all that myself, but knowing from experience talking to tenants, they would be like, well, why? What's your problem? Nobody's ever asked me for all that before. And I'm already kind of pushing it because, not really pushing it, I think it's fair. But sometimes I get people that get a little gruff about what I do ask for. I do ask for a W-9. I want to know their yearly income. Has it changed lately? I ask for their driver's license. I do ask for their social security card. So when I'm going through their application, whatever's on the application, I want to make sure that those numbers are the same in their documents. The good part about Section 8 requiring all that documentation is they use that information and they say, okay, what people should do is they should pay 30% of their income toward their housing, whether it's a mortgage or rent or whatever. That's just a good rule of thumb. And Section 8 says, okay, that's your income. And they include all kinds of good stuff in there that like award letters, for instance, is a good thing. They're able to read all those things from the state and from the government of different assistance and say, okay, 30% of that has to go toward rent. And that is how much the tenant is going to pay me. So when a tenant says to me, oh, I couldn't pay my rent this month and I just didn't have the right amount of money, I need to find out what's going on in their lives, what other choices did they make with their money, and make my decision from there. So that is something that I really like. Now, you would think it's a common mistake, and when I was new to renting to people with Section 8, I'll admit it, I had no idea what I was doing. This was back in 2007. I should back up and tell you who I am. I'm Monique Burns. My husband and I, in 2007, we bought a house that was the beginning of 2008. We had our first Section 8 tenant. I didn't do a bit of background check when I found out she had Section 8. I didn't even really know what Section 8 was. She was really kind and educated me about it. And I thought, good, I don't have to do a background check. And I did that with her. And then with my second tenant, it turns out she is still there. That first one is still there. The second tenant just left in 2019. I'm filming this in 2020. I'm actually filming this in East Grand Traverse Bay. Today is the first day of school for my kids, and I thought, great, they're doing it online. I am staying at my mom's rental. I come from a line of landlord women, which I think is pretty cool, but my mom has a rental in Northern Michigan. Here's the video for it right here. And so I couldn't be inside. I couldn't use my laptop because my daughter's using it, and I couldn't talk out loud because they're trying to do school. Two of them are doing school on their computers. So here I am in the middle of the bay, and it looks like a storm is rolling in. Enough about me. So I'll tell you my qualifications to make this video. So I started back then. We started a property management company in 2015. I've rented to hundreds of people with Section 8. I like it. I like it a lot. I'm glad all my tenants don't have Section 8 because it's a lot of work, I'll admit it. But for the most part, I find it to be a really good program if you know what you're doing. And so I'm making this series of videos so people can know what they're doing. So one of the things that I did learn that I find interesting, okay, so I'm floating into someone's yard and there's a man up there. I'm gonna paddle and finish somewhere else. This is awkward. So one thing I did learn about Section 8, before I ever ran background checks, I'm like, oh, they must be totally clean, wonderful people to get a Section 8 voucher. But it's not true exactly. There's thousands of pages of regulation that the different PHAs have to do if you want to understand the difference between, like, what is Section 8. You start with Section 8 for Dummies, and then you go into what is Section 8 really, and in what is Section 8 really, I define how it starts with HUD, Housing and Urban Development, which is the federal end, and then it goes to PHAs, which are the offices that the HUD hires to give these vouchers out. Well, HUD offices have different requirements, and each PHA comes up with its own plan, and some of them actually have their plan online. So be sure whichever PHA your tenant comes to you from, that you find out which one it is, and go online and see if their rules of what they do for the background check for the tenants, what their qualifications are, match your own, what you want for somebody living in your property. And I'm not a big believer in absolutely no felons. Now, mind you, all my properties are in Detroit, and I'm not dealing in higher end communities. My rule with any background check is I really just want to know the whole picture. I want the most qualified person, whatever that means. That boat better see me. I'm right near a boat launch. So one thing that I was really surprised to learn when I started this was that they do take felons. Section 8 does take felons. And I have this story how I learned this. It's about Ferlita the felon. She came to see, that's what I call her because she came to see one of our houses, and she said that she had felonies. I must have asked her because I'm pretty bold like that. When I meet people, hey, do you have felonies? And she said, yeah, she did. She was robbing St. John's Hospital, which was near where my house was. And when people were in for surgery, somebody she knew had access to all their records, and she said it was so much fun. She would dress up in these costumes and go use their ID to go buy things. And I was so confused that she still had Section 8. And I actually think she came to view my house drunk from the night before. She really smelled like she was. I did not rent to her. She was very surprised I didn't rent to her because she found me very kind. But when I found out she was a felon, yeah, I was kind. Okay, now I'm rocking with the waves from that boat. So much for a peaceful place to film. So what felonies they do. So I was editing and I realized I didn't really get to finish what I wanted to say about felonies, that each PHA has its own felonies that they will accept and not accept. And really it's probably a case by case, even though they do have it written out in their plan. But my advice is to always check on the felonies yourself. But one of the other big things that I wanted to make sure to stress is about evictions. You would think that somebody that has been evicted from another property would not be allowed to have Section 8 again. You would be very, very wrong, because it is up to the landlord to turn it into Section 8 that somebody was actually evicted. And when I do my background check, I'm not even looking at an eviction so much as how many times were they taken to court for non-payment of rent, because I don't want to deal with them. If they're chronic non-payers or if they've had problems but in the past, I really want to know that. And just running a background check is not necessarily going to tell you if that person has been evicted. Even though the background check that I pay for, I pay good money for, it does say that it will show me all the evictions, but it doesn't. I found it out myself that it really doesn't. And what I do to double check the work of the computer that just runs their background check is in Detroit, there is a website for 36districtcourt.com.org, I don't know. But I go on that website and there is a section called Case Lookup, and I can pull that person's name and I can see all their traffic violations. Sometimes felonies are even in there, garnishments are in there. All the public record, anytime somebody has been to court, a public record is created, and that means it's for the public, which means you are allowed to get access to those records. Now in Detroit, it's super easy because of that website, but if you're somewhere else, what you do is you look on their application of where are they living now and where did they live before. You figure out which courthouse in that area, just work on Google until you figure it out, handles all the eviction cases, and you call the courthouse and ask them if the person with this name has any records, and they, by law, have to give them to you. And that is how you find out the most about a tenant. Of course, you want to just talk to the landlords too, to get information from them. That's it for this part. Thanks. So I said I have this surprising part, but let me explain a little bit. So when I do my initial phone call, which is another video I'm making, be sure you find this. These are the thumbnails that I'm showing you. So if you go check out, if you subscribe, which I highly recommend, so that you can be sure to get all my videos, you'll see that come through. If you go to my channel, you'll see it, but that's what the thumbnail looks like once that video is made. And if you're finding this valuable, please give me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. It helps me. But one thing that I do in the initial phone call is I will ask about their current landlord, and I ask them, so now when I call your current landlord, what are they going to say about you? And that's always very telling how they answer that. Usually it's good, you know, well, they should say I paid on time all the time, but if there's a story, that will bring up the story. But I recently found this out, and it's not something that's advertised, and everyone really needs to know this. The PHAs, their Section 8 office, is required to give you the landlord's name and contact information so you can be sure that you are talking to their actual landlord, because it happens where tenants will put on their application their friend instead of their true landlord. And I have this whole thing that I do. I really need to make a series of how I do the entire background check, because this is just scratching the surface. I teach at my RIA group, our Real Estate Investors Association. Mine is Real Estate Investors Association of Oakland, as in Oakland County, Michigan, which is where I live, which is right outside of Detroit. But at the beginning of each RIA group meeting, I teach the beginner landlord class, and I was really amazed at all the notes people took when I spent an hour going over what I do in a background check. And people afterwards came up to me and they said, that's really thorough. Like, well, it's a big investment. Don't get it wrong. This is where you prevent evictions, is right up front in the background checks. But when I call the name that is on their application, I really need to make another video. But one of the things that I do, one of my favorite little tricks that I kind of just discovered on my own, was to say partway through the conversation, oh, yeah, she told me how she's related to you. How is that again? And they give it away every time. Oh, I'm her auntie. Like, oh, yeah, she did not tell me she was related to you. You do not suddenly seem like a credible reference at all. It's great, though, to know that you can confirm that you're getting the right phone number from the Section 8 office. They are actually required to tell you that. Good luck getting a hold of them. I would ask for an email address of the caseworker as part of the application, and that way you know that person's caseworker, and emailing them to me has always been the best way to go. There is one more thing that I do that I think is absolutely the most vital thing, but it's very, very important. I'm going to make a whole video all about how I ensure that they're not going to wreck my house. A lot of people think tenants with Section 8 are going to wreck your house. Look at my video on the pros and cons of Section 8. They can. They're just like any other tenant. But what I do is I pay them a little home visit of where they are living now. And there's a whole technique to it. I know that I'm more bold than a lot of people, that I will go do that. That's so awkward and weird, and you can't do that. I'm like, oh, yes, you can. This is your biggest investment. I am not messing with that. I mean, it's my biggest. So me as an owner of my own houses, I treat people that I manage for the same way, that I want to do every possible thing that I can. So I will be publishing that video next, so be sure you watch for that one. So check out my Secrets of Section 8 playlist here, all about investing in Detroit. You want a really good ROI between 9 and 15%. I am the one to help you out with that. So check out that playlist here, and you can subscribe here, and I'm going to cover up my face with the latest download. Thanks for watching.